In today's video, I want to just talk a little bit about zwavejs to MQTT. That is another option for you to use the zwavejs system or setup in Home Assistant. So let's go over to Home Assistant. All right, so the first thing you're going to notice here is that you have to have zwavejs to MQTT installed. That's in the add-on store, so you just go to the add-on store and search for zwave and install zwavejs to MQTT. Now, there is zwavejs as well. That is the preferred add-on, but that preferred add-on doesn't have a control panel that zwavejs to MQTT does. Now, zwavejs to MQTT does not require the use of the MQTT component. You can do directly WebSocket support with this add-on. So once you have the add-on installed, you can come over to integrations. And I do have a video on this where I showed this already. So search for that video for zwavejs stuff. But if you go to integrations and you look for integrations, and I think I said add-ons, it is integration. You go to integrations here and you see that we have the zwavejs integration. And this integration is actually set up to talk to the WS component. Now, if I were to go in here and remove this integration, and I'm doing this on my test setup, so don't try to do this on your production if you're just messing around. So I've removed it. Now I'm going to re-add it. I'm going to show you what it's going to do for me here. So I'm looking for zwavejs. Again, you're going to have the three options here, and we talked about that on my other video. You're going to have the deprecated 1.4 version, the Open Z-Wave Beta, which is the 1.6 version, and then zwavejs. We're going to install the Z-Wave component. And it's going to ask me if I want to use the zwavejs supervisor add-on. The answer is no, because we're going to use the zwavejs to MQTT add-on. So I'm going to click uncheck that box and I'm going to submit it. And now what it's asking me for is the address or URL of the WS server that is running on the MQTT JS zwavejs MQTT add-on. And I'm going to go ahead and bring this up in another window so we can see it at the same time. And in the add-on section, once you get this up and running, which is covered in the other video, if you open the web UI, you're going to have some options for the configuration. One of them is Home Assistant, and that is where you're going to have your WS server enabled and the server port. And you're going to use, now in my case, I had to do a different way, but in the case of this, we're going to try to use this right here. And this may or may not work. So that is the container address for the add-on. So I'm going to go back over here and I'm going to put that in here instead of localhost. And I'm going to leave it at port 3000. We're going to submit and see if it connects. And now it said it failed to connect. So what I'm going to try to do instead is I'm going to try to put in the IP address of my device here and leave it at port 3000. And see if that connects. And it said it failed to connect. All right. So we're going to check a couple things first. We're going to make sure that we're actually running port 3000 on the integration or the add-on. So outside of this control panel, we're going to go back to supervisor. We're going to go to zwave to JS to MQTT, and we're going to go to configuration. And right away, you'll see that this port is disabled. In order to use the WS server, you're going to have to enable the port. So I'm going to go ahead and insert 3000. You can map this to whatever port you have available. We'll just leave it at 3000 for default. I'm going to save that. It's asking me if I want to restart the add-on with my changes, and I do, because then it's going to incorporate that port 3000 into the network on my Home Assistant device, and then I'll be able to talk to that. All right, supposedly it's back up and running. Now we're going to try both of those things again. I'm going to try again the address of the add-on. See if it'll connect to that. And that didn't work. So now what we're going to do is we're going to try the host or the IP address of my device here. And there we go. All right, so not sure. I've seen people do it both ways, and I think it has to do with internally how the names are resolved on the device. In my case, I'm just connecting directly to port 3000 on this IP address. That also means if you're running kind of multiple devices, you can actually still connect to this way. If Home Assistant's sitting on something else and you're running this JS server on something else. All right, so here we have the controller and the smart energy switch. I only have one device on my test setup here. So I'm going to click on finish. And now, of course, you'll see 2 devices and 4 entities. All right, so now that it's up and running, we now have our JS server, our JS integration talking to the JS add-on. And that's all, again, covered in the other video. What I want to talk about a little bit is looking now at the actual interface here. And this is something that you get in the MQTT add-on that you don't get with the standard built-in zwavejs add-on in Home Assistant. And you can go 2 ways with this. The way we're doing it now is our integrations are in Home Assistant are talking to the add-on via the WebSockets, the WS address that we provided in the configuration. So everything that happens in here is going to be sent over to Home Assistant using WebSockets. You can go into settings here, and if you expand this out, you'll see you have all these settings: control panel, settings, scenes, debug, etc. If you go into settings, I've already got it set so it's not disabled the MQTT gateway. But if we disable the MQTT gateway, which is default, we will see now, if I refresh it, I guess, now you see, since we've disabled the MQTT gateway, that all we're seeing now is the Home Assistant setup, which is our WS server. So all we're using this for now is a control panel of sorts. And so we can go back over to our main dashboard here. I think it's called dashboard, the control panel. We'll go to the control panel, and then we can do stuff here. Now you can take, now the controller stick is the main hub that we're using for everything. Then we have this smart energy switch. You've got your node IDs here. You've got your manufacturer, your product code. You can rename these. Now, if you name this here in Home Assistant or in the add-on here, it's not going to translate that name over to Home Assistant. So if you're moving a whole bunch of things over from like say Open Z-Wave Beta to zwavejs, and you spend a bunch of time naming this in the add-on, it's not going to translate that name over to the Home Assistant instances. It tells you if it's secure, beaming failed, status is alive, interview stage is complete, and the last activity was at this time. Now you can click the drop-down arrow here, and you've got node actions. So if the node is not showing what you think it should show, you can re-interview the node, you can refresh the values, and then do some other queries here. You can set the name, you can set the location, and again, this comes across in MQTT, but not in the integration between the Home Assistant integration and this add-on here. This is a binary switch, so I can turn the switch on and off, and it's writing the value to the API. This is a multi-level sensor, so I'm getting power output from it. This is a meter, again, so I'm getting all kinds of more output from it. It's an appliance switch, and it has multiple outputs along with it. Under configuration, anything you change within this section or any of these sections, once you change it, you could actually change the report content from power to voltage. So if you wanted to monitor the voltage of, let's say, an outlet or something, you could click on that, send it. It sends it over. Not everything is going to always show up as something that the device is going to understand. There's a concept of command class And the command classes are what determine what devices do, what they show, what they respond to, that kind of thing. The idea here is that you can take these devices and you can update them using this control panel. This is the easy way to do that. You can also do things within this control panel in terms of Z-Wave, where you can set your network key and your port, logging. So what you can do also in this control panel is you can set the action. So you can re-interview nodes, and these are all for the selected nodes, stop the network, heal the network, do a reset, etc. You can add or remove devices from here. And we'll go back to integrations. All right, so even under the integrations, and you can see we're connected to the network here, you can add nodes and remove nodes. So you can do that both here, and you can do that within the zwavejs control panel. So add remove device or add remove node here, and you get your list of devices, just like we normally do in an integration. List of entities assigned to this integration as well. So you've got all that going for you. All right, so let's go over to my production system now and take a quick look at the zwavejs control panel. And I'll show you a couple things here that I have discovered. I've been using this for a little over a week now, or maybe a little under a week. And there's a couple things that stood out to me right away. One of them is that I'm using a garage door controller. So I've got this Nortec Security Control LLC garage door controller. It's the NGD00Z-4. And it uses, and I mentioned this before, I would talk about the command classes. It uses what's called a barrier command class. And prior to this morning, which is the date of the recording, prior to this morning, the barrier operator class wasn't included in the integration or the add-on. And that just got added, like I said, this morning. So now we have the state of the barrier. What I didn't have before was this barrier state telling me whether or not the garage door was open or whether or not it was closed. And so I couldn't determine that from anything in the garage door. That just tells you how much better this integration is, or this add-on is, than what we've been using before, simply because we have a community that's actively working on these things. Now, it did exist in Open Z-Wave Beta, so it's not a knock against Open Z-Wave Beta. But the fact that something didn't exist in what we're using now, and within a week or less, it's been added into this is pretty amazing. So that's there now. The other thing that I'm having an issue with currently has to do with my locks, if I can find them here. I've got two quick set locks. And these quick set locks, whenever the door is locked or unlocked, it doesn't actually tell me that the door is locked or unlocked within this. Is say the current status of the bolt. This does not update automatically. I can click on, I can either, one of two things. I can either go here to my front door lock node actions, and I can do a re-interview of the node. And if it's unlocked, it'll switch here. That's not ideal, obviously. And I first thought this was a polling issue, but what it turns out to be is an issue with the lock itself in reporting manual changes whenever the door is open or locked or unlocked manually. And that's what I have a problem with. So looking at my dashboard here, I have the door locks here, but I can't really tell you, here they are, the door locks. I can't really tell you whether they're open or closed right now, because I'm not confident in the reporting. If I were to click on one of these two things, it's either going to reverse the action or it will query it and tell me that it's open or closed. So for example, if it's open now and I click on it, it will just change this to red and tell me it's open. If it's actually locked, which it says it is, and I click on it, it will actually unlock it and then change the state. It's just the manual changing of the lock and whatnot that doesn't update here. And that's being actively worked on as well. All of my other devices in here have been okay and work okay. So I have a whole bunch of other devices within my Home Assistant instance here using Z-Wave all the way from power meters to in-wall switches to multi-sensors. The only other one I'm having an issue with is this smoke detector. This is a Z-Wave combo first alert smoke detector, and I just need to probably remove it and then re-include it, and it'll probably be fine. I haven't tried that yet. Everything else is up and running and doing just fine. Other issue I did have was on one of my multi-sensors. I had to actually wake it up and then do a node pull or node heal, and then it showed up correctly after that. When I talk about actually doing configuration changes, and I showed a little bit of that a minute ago, but if I look at my sensor, which is an AOTech sensor, within this dashboard or control panel, something you don't have with the stock add-on, you have the ability to change the configuration. And this one has a number of things you can change. The reset timeout for motion is a big one. Low battery reporting threshold is another big one. You can set all the thresholds for various things in here, and it's as simple as changing the value here. Let's say I wanted the motion reset to be 10 seconds instead of 20. Then I would change it to 10 and I would send it off, and it would go update the device. Now, the device has to be woken up for it to update. And that, I don't know how well that works. When I was doing this in the original version of Z-Wave, it took a few tries to get it correct. But if you go wake it up per the manufacturer's instructions and you send it a value change, it will probably just update just fine. All right, so those are the things that you can get out of this control panel. Now let's go back over here to the other development one, my test site, and let's talk about the MQTT part of it first. If you want to enable MQTT, you can do that by unchecking or closing, turning this off, the disable button, and saving it. And you'll have to do a reload of the page because then you'll get your options back. Go back into settings here. Now you have MQTT and gateway. MQTT, if you have the Mosquito broker installed on your device that you're running this on, it should just work fine. It gives you a prefix of Z-Wave, so your topic starts with Z-Wave. You can come down here under the gateway and change some values. So do you want to use the node name instead of the numeric ID? And for that, we're talking about you're either going to send this as part of the topic or you're going to send this as part of the topic. And so this is the time when I talk about the naming actually making sense here. This name will come across as the node name if you set this node name instead of numeric ID. So when you're looking at the topic within the MQTT broker, then you'll see the topic as the node ID. You can send Z-Wave events. You can include node info. I'm not going to go into detail about all the MQTT stuff. If you're using MQTT, you probably know what this stuff means anyway. That is an option to send things MQTT. I will say that right now, when we talk about this door, garage door opener, and this, I'm assuming, just updated my sensor. So it took a few minutes to update. When we're talking about this garage door controller, the release this morning released the barrier operator class. However, Home Assistant has to update the integration in order for it to know that this exists and how to deal with it. That has not happened yet, and I'm being told that might happen in the next couple of weeks or so. In the meantime, I can send via MQTT this barrier information and act upon the barrier information until such time as Home Assistant updates the integration to start looking at the barrier class and dealing with the barrier class. MQTT can be used in conjunction with the others gateway setup. So I'm running both MQTT and I'm running the Home Assistant WebSocket. So I'm doing both. What I'll have to do in Home Assistant is create a sensor template and have it read the value of the barrier or the cover, the garage door cover, and then I can act upon it. So that does give the option for classes that aren't exposed to Home Assistant yet. You can use MQTT, send those over to Home Assistant, and then act upon them that way. And then when Home Assistant builds out the class into the integration and starts consuming data that way, then you can turn off that portion of the gateway or whatever. Okay, a couple other things I want to talk about in regards to zwavejs. There is a web page on this that you probably should familiarize yourself with. It talks a lot about how to use Z-Wave, the configuration, the different types of Z-Wave you can use. So for example, this is the set lock user code. You can do this with the built-in integration, not the MQTT version of that, although you can do the same thing within the control panel here. You can use this control panel settings to do the same thing. But if you don't use the MQTT version, you can do that through these services here. Some of the things I do want to talk about are some of the limitations. Right now, they're supporting most of the common devices, and it's obvious because I have a lot of switches and things that are supported out of the box. My barrier operator command class says almost finished, but as of this video, it is now finished for the most part, except for the Home Assistant integration part. The zwavejs part is finished. That's a limitation. You can track the status of not fully yet implemented zwavejs stuff at this link here, and it gives you a whole list of items that are in various states, how they're supported, and what version they actually get supported in, and basically what the state is. So you can track all of that. Configuration of Z-Wave nodes or configuration with the UI is not yet implemented. You'll need to use another tool, which is what we're talking about today. The zwavejs to MQTT control panel allows you to manage device configuration. Polling is not currently supported, but it will be added as soon as they get to it. Support for setting configuration parameters through service calls is not supported, but may be added later. No migration path currently from any other Z-Wave implementation in Home Assistant to this one. I do know that's on the roadmap, so that will probably happen at some point. And of course, here's the roadmap for zwavejs integration. All kinds of things are on here. If you're curious what they're trying to do, they are looking at on the roadmap the migration wizard, and then some of these other things. So that would be interesting to pay attention to as well. All that's linked from the Home Assistant zwavejs page. Here's some discussion about how to migrate over. I showed you that in my other video. So you can watch the video or read through that. Advanced installation instructions. Here's an important thing here. The Z-Wave network key is in the OZW, and the main integration looks like it's hexed. But then when you try to install Z-Wave to zwavejs to MQTT, it requires a different format. It's super simple. You basically remove the leading 0x, and you remove the trailing comma and space, crunch it all together, and then basically what you have is a key that looks something like this. So I'll just do, so let's say you have 0x01, comma 0x02, 0x0f, something like that. That's the key in OpenZWave Beta. That's the key in the 1.4 deprecated version. In zwavejs to MQTT, the key is going to look like this: 01, 02, 0f, and it's 32 characters. This is just a short example. So I'm removing the leading 0x, and I'm removing the comma, and that's how you get this right here. So if you're using a network key and you want to use that in zwavejs to MQTT, you'll need to do that. Super simple. All right, what else we got going on here? You can read all the rest of the stuff on this page. No need to get into it. One thing I will ask or mention is about polling. That seems to be a big question. Let me find it specifically. So polling is needed because some legacy devices don't report their values automatically. They require polling to get updated values when controlled manually. The door locks that I'm talking about earlier, I think are part of this, or that they're telling me that they're reported to the wrong command class. So maybe that's a different problem. But I thought the polling was an issue. So if you do have to poll, you can set up automation. One way to do that they talk about is to schedule polling on a per value basis. You can use that to keep the polling to a minimum. And you can also do something like if you walk into a room where a device is and you want to poll the state of a device that's in that room, only poll that device whenever the automation triggers based on motion in the room. And the reason why is polling is considered bad practice and should only be used as a last resort because it slows down your already very low speed Z-Wave network, and it can slow down your commands. So integrations or implementations that use polling, if you were to turn on a light switch, for example, it may take a few extra seconds or milliseconds because the whole polling stuff is going on in the background and it just slows down your network. All right, and then you've got all these other issues here. They have a very active Discord server, which is also linked on this page. Make sure you jump into Discord there, or you can jump into my Discord, linked in my video here, to ask me questions. I'll do what I can to answer them, but a lot of that's covered here. So anyway, I just want to go over basically what the zwavejs2 MQTT is, and give you a kind of a rough idea of what this looks like. Again, I hope this was helpful. I am not by no means an expert in all of this, but I can answer some limited questions. So make sure you ask those in the comments, or you get on my Discord server and ask me there. If you liked the video, hit that like button, that thumbs up button, so that the algorithms kind of promote the video. And appreciate you watching. We'll see you on the next video.